Can you all hear me okay in the back? Right? Okay, great. Hi, Lauren and brother. How you doing, Nick? Okay, great that you could all be here. Nice to see so many of our students. I'm Bonnie Brown, coordinator of Native American Studies, and it's always such a treat to host our elder in residence and to celebrate a week of wonderful activities. As we begin, though, in the traditional way, we like to start with a blessing. And for that, I'll ask our friend, Mr. Dick Savoy, to come up, who is a member of the Red Cliff Band of the Lake Superior Chippewa. And I want to present him with tobacco as a sign of respect and my humility in asking him to do this for us.
Thank you, Bonnie. Okay, good. Well, great and universal Spirit, you whose voice we hear in the waters and in the wind, whose breath gave life to us and to all our relations, hear us. We ask you to bless this gathering. We have come together this evening in celebration of the beauty of our natural world and to listen to the words of our distinguished speaker, Professor Diane Glancy, whose wisdom continues greatly to enrich our understanding of life. In this life, we know not whence we came or why. We know not why we go or where. But the truth is, with the aid of the Great Spirit, we are still here. We ask His blessing on this gathering, on us, and on all our relations. Thank you.
So the next part of our program is a welcoming song by Onai Singers. And I'm filling in for one of the Onai singers who couldn't be here tonight, so don't be too harsh on me. All right. So thanks to Elisa for leading the Onai Singers. And now I asked my colleague, Dr. Hyde, to come up and give our formal introduction of our guest, Ms. Glancy. And Elisa, along with my other colleague, Dr. Carrie Carpenter, have put in a tremendous amount of work leading up to this great week of literary presentations and this evening's event and so on. It's been just wonderful. So I want to thank them, both Carrie and Elisa. Let's give them a round of applause.
No, okay, I'll get it. Bezonk. For my Cherokee relatives here, Shio. And a big hello to all of you. It is a wonderful night for me to be able to be here and to have Diane Glancy with us. Welcome to my home. In every way, this is my home, almost every way. It's been my professional home for 30 plus years. And as a Native person, with ancestors that go back some 14,000 years, this place we call West Virginia today is a home. And this land was Shawnee land and Cherokee land, Mingo, Lenape, Seneca. The list is very long for the Native people of this place. And I also have this marvelous opportunity this evening to do a number of things. The first is to introduce this extraordinary writer and woman, to, I hope, give her a homecoming, which she may not have thought of before coming here, but indeed it is, and to honor her as an elder. Now, the first of those wonderful things is to look at the wonderful writing that she's done. And I don't even know how to start with that because, oh no, she says, don't do it, don't do it. Over 50 books, novels, short stories, she just won't let me go on. And I won't, because the wonderful thing is you can read them. And you're going to hear some of them tonight. So that's what I think everyone should do. Go and read her words. They're there. So as somebody who teaches literature and tries to write a little bit of it, I would say it's great work. But that's only one part of who this person is that is sitting here tonight. I heard her speak several years ago, give a reading like this one up at Waynesburg College, up the road a little piece. And while I really liked what I heard in her reading, I also felt like she had a tremendous heart. And I thought, oh boy, if I'm lucky, she'll be able to come to WVU at some point. So tonight, one of my little dreams came true, and she's here. But for Native people in particular, I think her work, the one thing I will have to say about it is that she captures, I think, the spirit and voices of ancestors that many of us have to reach back a fair distance to get to. And to have those voices and spirits given to us through her work is something I'll always treasure, because her pushing the bear is something that probably more than anything else I've read about the Trail of Tears moved me to be able to reach back to some Cherokee ancestors that I have and to really get a sense of what they may have gone through on that walk. And so that means more to me than what many would maybe think. And so that's very important for us. I'd also like to make this something of a homecoming. Part of West Virginia, down in the southern part of the state, usually we think of it as the boundary being the Kanawha River. That part of West, we now call West Virginia, was part of the traditional homelands of the Cherokee. And so in that way, she's coming home. That's part of her roots. She, like so many of us, is a mixed descent person. Cherokee, German, and I think English, is that correct? Almost all of us who are from this part of the country, we're mixed descent. We tend to be mixed descent people. And that gives us a unique place, sometimes a hard place, but it's, I think, a very rich place to be from. And in West Virginia, we have 55 counties, and the last time I counted, in about 15 of them, Native people were the largest minority group, and sometimes we lose sight of that fact. And of those, that minority, the largest group of those are Cherokee. How many people in here tonight have Indian blood in their background? If you're here, would you stand up, please, and be recognized? There we go. Sometimes called the most invisible of minorities. How many of you are Cherokee descent? Oh, all right. So you see, you are among relatives, Diane. And I hope that all of you, whether you're Cherokee descent or like all of us, we're all American, we're all mixed. And so I think her work is something that should be able to speak to all of us. I know she speaks of all her roots, not just her Cherokee roots, in a wonderful way. And so I hope that she'll have a sense of coming home here and will think about this as being a home for her that she'll come back to again in the future. And then finally, I'd like to talk about her as an elder, because she's here tonight through this wonderful relationship that we've had between the English department and creative writers and Native American studies. That relationship has gone back a decade or longer. And it's been a very positive thing here, I think, at WVU. But it is also to recognize this year's WVU Native American Studies Elder in Resident. And I think a lot of times people might wonder, well, who's an elder? How would we even define something like that? And I have to say, it's a term that probably would change from tribal nation to tribal nation. But in my mind, that's all I can give you is my idea of who an elder is. And it isn't just, an elder isn't just made by these gray hairs. Usually elders will have that because it takes a long time to figure out some actual wisdom in this life, I think. And so it's somebody who has thought deeply, I think, about what it means to be a human being. The Cherokee called themselves the Salagi, the principal people. And I think by that they have meant to be a human being is to be a big principal part of what we're here to figure out. And I believe that in her work, and as a person, she is an elder. She is somebody who has given a real contribution, not only to the background of the Cherokee people, but I think to thinking human beings. And I hope that as you listen to her reading tonight, you will hear that heart, that wisdom, that great giving spirit that I have seen in her. And the other thing, in just the last couple of days that has really impressed me about Diane Glancy is that she is still willing to take chances. She's willing to jump forward and to try new things, which I think a lot of us, even when we're young, we don't have the courage to do that. And she's still hot on that trail of creativity and just a wonderful spirit. So without anything further, please give a warm mountain welcome to Diane Glancy. We have a tradition that in Native American circles that when we ask someone for some knowledge, to show respect, we give them the gift of tobacco.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I wanted to begin by recognizing winter because it's had such a loud voice so far this year. This was written when I lived in Minnesota. Well, I was on my way back to Minnesota after a trip away from it. Comanche, Museum of Natural History, University of Kansas, Lawrence. It was after a hard day we followed rain on the Kansas Turnpike. We have it often out here, pecking the windshield, louder then softer, with a brief respite under the underpass as if the wind suddenly stopped to take a breath. And the clouds raised their white flags in the sky, and I thought of the horse I had seen in the museum in Lawrence after visiting my daughter in her last year of law school at the university. And now my friend and I were returning to Minnesota, the horse, Comanche, the only survivor of the Little Bighorn, June 25th, 1876. He stood in his glass case with some drums and war clubs, some sagegrass and a few bleached bones to give him the still on the prairie look. His dark eye like a buckeye, his bridle marked 7th Cavalry, his body restored with excelsior and wood and a few bones, his hide preserved in salt brine, the mount of Captain Miles Keogh, a plaque explains. The only living thing found on the battlefield by relief troops arriving 2 days later. The horses that could walk were probably led off by the Indians, Cheyenne, though other bands gathered against Custer. Now we pay toll at the end of the Kansas Turnpike, and I look for Highway 35 to take north to Minnesota, nearly 8 hours away, and it's already 5 o'clock. And there off in the distance is Kansas City, and the rain isn't falling except in big drops off the viaducts and under overpasses and what washes up from the cars ahead of us. We pass the refineries and storage silos like a tribe of ancestors. Then the old stockyards where my father came as a young man 70 years ago and lived his life, and now it's over. I wonder what it was like for Comanche that first and second night he lay on the prairie by himself. Maybe he heard the moans of the dying soldiers. He must have heard the Indians at their work of scalping and dismembering and gathering up what could be carried off, as though the battle were over and the booty of boots and brass buttons and epaulets and war weapons and rifles were really theirs. At first the sleet is delicate as a gourd rattle, as delicate as the rattle in a burnt-out light bulb. A few miles later, the sleet pecks harder. The highway is fragile as the glass in a light bulb. We expected fog in Iowa, some icy roads, but we hear on the radio of the snow in St. Paul. Temperatures down to below zero. I watch the white line to stay on the road. My friend watches ahead for the red taillights of other cars. Several hours later in Minnesota, the highway is nothing more than a few ruts through the snow. I keep driving, thinking of the power of the ancestors. When we get to St. Paul, I even make it up the hill on Randolph Boulevard, make it within a few blocks of my house. But my street has not been plowed, and I have to leave my car in a snowbank at the end of the street. There's snow over the wheel wells, and the car won't move. We walk through snow up to our knees. I feel it inside my boots and the legs of my trousers. I even struggle to get into the house through the snow packed against the front door. We make several trips back to unload the car, lifting our feet through the snow, the dark sky over us, the moans of the dying storm around us, the white air of our breath among the war shields and war clubs and ghost drums. Let's see, I think I will start the reason for crows. I'm very interested in Native history, and I'm very interested in giving voice to those in Native history who did not have a chance to speak. One of the earliest people I wrote about was Kateri Tekakwitha, a 17th century Mohawk. And this is going to be a drive-through reading. I'm going to skip a lot through the book because I want to do other things tonight. Many years ago in New York City, I found an Indian girl on one of the panels of the front doors of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Who was she, this Kateri Tekakwitha, this lily of the Mohawks who lived only 24 years? The novel is about the coming of the Jesuits. And this is a first-person narrative. The moaning was my first memory. I think it was them, my father and mother. They died in the smallpox epidemic with my infant brother. I was 5 years old. Blackbirds gather, waiting for our death. I felt the birds peck my face. In my fever dream, I was floating in a stream. A spirit lowered its basket to gather water. I was in the water that spilled into the basket. For a while, I was inside God. I floated like a crow. My mother was Algonquin, my father a Mohawk chief. I was born in a village on the south bank of the Mohawk River. My mother was Christian, my father was not. The smallpox left its encampment. My parents and brother were gone, though I still had relatives. Children laughed when I passed. Boys turned away from my face. I am scarred. I feel the pits on my face with my fingers. My eyesight is bad. I look into the woods and see snow that is not there. The shapes of trees are blurred. This toxic God, this fire who burns everything away. I see lions when I sleep. I did not know what a lion was until I saw one in a book in the mission. They have eaten Christians. They are magnificent in their roaring. Jesus is a lion. I often see him in a mane of light. Smallpox is a crow. Its black wings like the night. Its beak eats my face. If black were an object, it would be water, the way it shapes the rocks in its path. My name, Tekakwitha, means the one who walks, groping her way, or one who bumps into things. It is a name that can go several ways. It can have several meanings, but they all have to do with seeing what is before me. Smallpox nearly took my eyesight. I tripped my way through the village, especially in the bright light. I see snow. I have said that, but it repeats itself also. I hardly remember the earth before it blurred. I was scarred with smallpox, yet I made ribbons from strips of eel skin and painted them red. I tied them in my hair. I picked corn with my uncle's wife and sister, sometimes holding one hand over my eyes when the light of the sun hurt them. I listened to the forest, the noise of the birds as they called to one another. I listened to the wind through the leaves, the water in the rivulets, and the river. It was sound I saw. The smallpox continued. It moved among tribes. We heard of it from a distance. We saw it in our own village. It began with fatigue. Someone could not climb a tree for bird eggs. Then there was nothing they wanted to do or could do. Then fever, headache, backache, vomiting. Red spots appeared on the tongue like berries. Then the spots moved to the mouth and the throat. The spots turned to blisters. The blisters covered the face, arms, legs, palms of the hands, soles of the feet. They were under the eyelids. Joints swelled. There was bleeding, terrible dreams, delirium, pustules, crusted over the whole body, then death. Now I wear a blanket over my head to hide my eyes from the light, but mostly I wear it to cover my pocked face. I am not able to help those who are sick with smallpox. I am not yet strong enough to turn them on their mats, but I can wipe their sores, sit beside them, fan them. The forest holds us in its teeth. The forest is a lion. I am ugly, I am ugly. I hate everyone not pocked. The priest face chapped in the cold. They grow beards. They grow hair to hide their faces. I could tell the weather by the way they walked, hunched, cloaked, as if I did not know weather. I could tell by watching them. The trees watch, they who have stood a long time. They laugh. The priests do not know. They think theirs is the only way. They do not know the trees do not like them. The sky is pocked with stars. I am not alone. The Lord walks with the sky and the earth. Which of his sleeves do I hear? Which of the squawks do I see? What is this I feel? What is calling me? Who was this man who asked for everything and gave nothing in return but the promise for eternal life? How can I explain? I feel a pull, a certainty. I feel a doubt, a questioning of what I felt. I have nothing certain but a belief that God is. My people did not want to believe. I would be a reparation for the sins of my people. I took off my beads and eelskin ribbons. I scourged myself, whipping a small branch against my back. I could not hit hard enough, but with repetition, the bark began to scrape my flesh. Finally, the bites of pain. I flinched, I trembled with each lashing. In the rhythm, there was a will to suffer. It became an offering. I wanted to suffer. I felt God's judgment on sin. I smelled the sharp smell of blood. I stood holding on to the trees. I walked into the cold river, the St. Lawrence. I waited until it covered my chest, until I could hardly stand in the current. The spasms in my body drove me out. My skin shivered as if someone was lifting my flesh from me. My blood became water. My bones became the fish. And I am moving now to the end of the book, after she died at the age of 24. Above the world, I saw the opening of light. I saw the cherubim that bore the weight of the throne, with 4 faces, wings, hoof feet, and wheels. They reflected the light of God that came from the opening. I saw the cherubim had faces of a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. Once again, I fell on my knees. This time it was because of the glory I saw. What can I say of them? Whoso bears God's praises bears his likeness. Then I looked above the cherubim and saw on the throne the glory that was God. I wanted to move on now to a book of nonfiction called The Dream of a Broken Field. And this is the title piece. I think of how to govern an unruly collection of essays, a collection of broken pieces, actually, how to relay the broken with the broken. On a trip, I listened to the United States Constitution, a Simon & Schuster audiobook narrated by Walter Cronkite, which I do not recommend, by the way, when you're driving a long distance, because there's not a lot of suspense to keep you awake. I hear how it became a confluence of many parts in 1788, preamble, 7 articles, 27 amendments, the first 10 of which are the Bill of Rights. Then the auxiliaries. It is part Magna Carta from 1215, part Articles of Confederation from 1771. It is part of the 1776 Virginia Declaration of Rights. It is part Federalist Papers, 85 essays declaring how government would work, written from 1787 to 88, and serving as reference, and part Mayflower Confederation. I listen to the multiplicity of groundings that ground the complexities of governing a country. I want to add the U.S. Constitution also was taken in part from the Iroquois Confederation. I write a preamble to my book of essays. Excuse these broken, these lost, missing parts, saying this to get to that. Excuse these voices that sometimes seem to come from the past, or from over the air, or from some distant place. Excuse these shortened, unfinished lines, these uneven pieces. this interrupted text. Excuse the jarred ride over rough roads, potholes, unpaved sections. Excuse this chopping through the brush to find the way. I'm doing this on my own. Where's my caterpillar, my road grader, my bobcat? I am a sojourner as my fathers were. Psalm 39:12. I wake with a dream from which I began to write a journey. A black and white photo, a street uphill, with rows of older brick two-story houses facing one another. Brownstones, maybe they are called. There is snow on the street and up the steps to the front door of heavy beveled glass. At the top of the street is a school or a church or both. Catholic, where Jesus bleeds on his cross. But my family was not Catholic. We did not have nuns, priests, catechism, and all the trappings. We did not live on that street. We were Protestant. We belonged to Trinity Methodist Church. I felt somewhat invisible, left out of Catholicism, yet fearful and dismissive of it at the same time. Up the street in my dream, children were stamped with religion. They wore uniforms. Nuns slapped their hands with rulers. Their mothers pushed out more and more children. They were washing and ironing hourly. Did I long for the burden of icon and imagery, the smell of incense, the unbearable weight of litany, the confession booth? As Methodists, our high and remote priest was Christ. We believed no particular doctrine. We attended church, but church stayed in church. It barely made an impact in our lives other than an unexamined habit. Our church was a fortress-like Missouri limestone structure on Armour Boulevard in Kansas City, Missouri, where I had regular attendance tucked away in the basement of Sunday school classes. Why didn't I dream of brick or brownstone houses crowded together, a church at the top of the street, no way out, nowhere up but where I didn't belong, houses like ones I never lived in? What I remember of my old neighborhood were the small houses along Woodland and 50th Terrace. What I saw in my dream were substantial brownstones. In my neighborhood, our houses sat at the top of the street. The neighborhood in the photo in my dream was formalized, more established than my old neighborhood of bungalows. It was, after all, a photo, a representation, maybe a misrepresentation of what I remember. Maybe I was reminded of the authority of the past, an authority that felt papal. There was a convent farther up the street on Woodland that might have further established that impression. My mother ran the house with order. Maybe the church or school was a representation of my house, a place that would mark or stamp my life as far as feelings were concerned, with a mother superior at the head. Maybe my old neighborhood was transformed in the dream into brownstones with heavy doors, father priest, mother nun, nowhere to go but punishment in a cold atmosphere. Maybe that's what was couched in my winter dream. My great-grandfather, Woods Lewis, was a fugitive, running from trouble in Indian Territory just before the Civil War. He fled to Tennessee, joined a cavalry regiment in the Union Army, and later settled in northwestern Arkansas because he could not return to Indian Territory, though he tried, but word got out. The exact trouble had several versions. He was a full-blood Cherokee. He did something that got him in trouble. He ran. Later, he had 8 children. One of them, I know, married into a religious family. She was my grandmother, bridging the renegade and the fundamentalist. We used to play kickball in the street on 50th Terrace that came up the hill from Paseo, where the street flattened for 3 or 4 houses before it reached Woodland Avenue, where we lived. My father was a fugitive also, like his grandfather. He fled poverty in northern Arkansas. He came to Kansas City just before the Depression and worked in the stockyards 46 years before his death. This is a ball kicked down the street, the dream piece. This piece dreamed with a sharp transition of a dream. In the dark and murky journey forever on its way to truth, I write these words to make a place on which to stand. I've always loved my car, and I want to read a piece called Warhorse 1. Followed by Warhorse 2. Warhorse 1. I have a new car now, but for 13 years I drove a brown Buick station wagon. It had 184,333 miles when I gave it to a friend. Toward the end I cried when I had to look for another car, but it would not pass emissions test. I asked an Indian friend what he was going to do with his Indian car. He said there wasn't a test on the reservation and he could keep his car. He asked what I was going to do with the Buick. He could use it for hunting. As soon as I had a place for it, I could think of another car. The first key I had for it bent from turning the ignition all those years. They almost never got a new key made. I remember when I saw that car in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I knew it was mine. I don't drive in Oklahoma anymore, but I remember it on the back roads there, driving Highway 62 to Altus when it must have been 105, no air, sitting on Mount Scott near Lawton, driving to the Black Mesa that reaches New Mexico. My children grew up in that car. Everyone said it would never start in Minnesota when I moved, but it did. I got a small truck battery and we went through the snow. I cleaned out the glove compartment when the car went to the Fond du Lac Reservation without me. Insurance papers in 8 addresses in 3 different states. A few invoices for new brakes, a transmission, a rear light, a few maps. A Bible with curled pages under the front seat. Nothing in the trunk but 2 ice scrapers and some rope. I used to tie things on top of the car once in a while. A 1978 Buick Estate wagon, serial number 4RX358X153975, brown as a warhorse. The next time I see my old car, it's in the movies. Yes, you won't believe it, but there's this film, this documentary with reservation, and my old car is in it, showing up like a big shot, next to the moose hanging on the scaffolding after hunting season. The Indian friend who has my car now starting to dress the moose, and the car there as if it had had part in the hunt, as if maybe it held the bow and arrow. Just like when you go to the hunting grounds and you are new again, and the old way of life returns, as if you'd never had to do without it. Yes, I know someday I'll see that car again on the highway. We'll pass as if old friends. Did not our heart burn within us? The disciples asked when Christ passed them on the road after the resurrection. They were going somewhere, talking with their friends, and he just passed. Yes, sometime I'll be going somewhere, and my old car will come up from behind and pass me the way I know sometimes my Father has been beside me, only I didn't know it until the moment he left. I wanted to return to the dream of a broken field. Much of it is about driving. I was at a creative nonfiction seminar at the University of Iowa. So this is called penmanship. Interstate 80, through the harvested fields of Iowa, was full of cars and trucks, all orderly and in rows, 2 east, 2 west, like the monitored passing of students in a crowded hall between class. There were lines everywhere. The gray highway was like a ruled tablet in grade school for elemental letters of the alphabet. There was a dusty sun in the faded sky, under which were rows of cars oncoming or going before me. It was a place cleared for moving, as if the highway had been mowed for the passage of cars and trucks through the field on that particular day. There was a holiness to it, plain and pedestrian, as is travel on I-80 in early November, with a few harvesters still in the field, stirring dust, but mostly fields mowed down to the ground. In the car alone, through the layers of air, there was a sheerness of travel. The land is integral in shaping voice. Travel to place or setting is central to my writing. It is in passing over the land that I find voice and comforture, an overture of comfort, that we are embedded in landscape no matter how long uprooted. Voice resides in the land. In fact, land is the origin of voice that shapes the events upon it. It was the voice of the land that called the animal migration trails, that called the Indian migration trails, that called early explorers, land surveyors, mail routes, wagon train routes, railroad beds, and finally the American highways that pass along those old trails without knowing it. I think that's why the steady movement of the large 18-wheel trucks on the interstate remind me of the migrating tribe of buffalo. The land defines the spirit of momentum that has been America. I still pick it up in travel. The Europeans who came to this continent interpreted the cause of space provided by the landscape as manifest destiny. That same voice of the presence of space was interpreted by the Native American as, it is one of us, the same as us, or we are one with it. What happens to it happens to us. Native writing is about the interplacement of human events onto the landscape. It is a recognition of the entity or agency of landscape. It is about the transmigration of elements between them, or the transmogrification, I want to say, of the essence of language that is a type of landscape reflective of the elements. Over my years of travel, I hear the changing voices of the land. I find that stories have layers. I pick up the different voices of the land as though they were hitchhiking there. Storytelling is change. It is relative. It shifts according to varying circumstances. It is possible that my responsibilities with writing change as I get into another level of my life because I am then able to hear another level of the land. As I passed over the highway in Iowa, I felt the late autumn across the muted road. How to write on an elementary tablet while keeping the car on the road as an act of penmanship, to register, to record, to maneuver the straight lines through the description and scrutiny. The earth was gray as lead, with traffic moving like a pencil along a ruler. There was community, a continuity of cars moving both ways. We were not isolated in our separate cars, but moving together in a united effort. This passage, this travel, which life is and remains to the end, that shepherds a flock of cars on an interstate. It seemed a pastoral, the momentum that was gasoline in an engine that moved the herd of sheep along the lanes, following obediently, with some of the cars passing. The metal autumn, gunmetal, steel gray, a determination, an achievement. It was slow, suspended travel over the harvested fields, though the car moved at 70 miles an hour. The lines of cornrows passed the fields in the quietness and overall suspension of travel, a suspension above time, riding also with the lines of Indian tribes and wagon trains, as if pencils in the groove on a school desk. Ahead, a grain truck traveling on a white road beside the interstate in a strong easterly wind blows the gravel dust across the highway like chalk dust after school. The dream of a broken field is the dream of fields furrowed with plow blades for the purpose of bearing crops, broken so they can bear harvest. Lord, when I pass from this earth, may it be in a car on a road such as this. One other short passage for another essay called Off the Road. I love obscure places in the Bible. This is from Jeremiah 15:6. The words were found and I ate them. Sometimes I have to come in off the road. I have to stay here quiet, waiting until I hear the call from a distant place, and I have to go again. Sometimes before a trip, I feel the road calling. I can't wait to get to it. It's not a voice, but a momentum, a little embodiment riding sidecar to the world of enormity. In travel, I run into a finite wall that smashes into pellets and allows a passage. That is also the dream of a broken field, passage into an infinite sort, travel that splits open what I know with possibility, a small following in the footsteps of the U.S. Constitution that governed something larger than it ever imagined, the idea of harvest I found in the Iowa field. I must have had to leave someone once. I've thought sometimes it must have been before birth. There was an exact moment broken off from that moment in driving, then disappearing because I would crack further if I understood it fully. I always find a vestige of it returning again when I am driving. While watching a play in New York City, there was a band on stage, back in the shadows, piano, guitar, bass, cello, viola. Music was most of the play. I watched the beat of the conductor. She knew what it was to drive across the land on a long trip. She felt the music the same way I felt driving. I was riding on the open land again, though crowded in a small theater seat with my large winter coat on my lap. I drive because I can get there faster than I could fly from Kansas City to Dallas on a recent trip. There was a dusting of snow. It was their excuse to close down for a morning. I drive because I can get to Dallas in 8 hours, and it took 10 to fly. I also drive because there is language in it. I remember long ago when we visited my father's people. Just a few times, I heard the Cherokee language in the background. I couldn't speak it or understand it, and I didn't hear it often. But I wanted to use English to provide a road on which some aspect of that old language could pass. Or I wanted to find a ceremony in language that allowed some sort of filament of what was to come through. A broken field presented this possibility. That also was the dream of a broken field, to let something larger than itself and ourselves pass. I've always had wonderful automobiles. They have been like animals. The old Buick I had almost 190,000 miles, and then I had a red Ford Taurus, and I can't remember exactly how much it was. And then after that, I had my favorite car, a Durango, and it went 199,000 miles, and I began to feel it surge on the highway. So I got my current car, which is a 2007 Chevy Equinox, and it has 208,000 miles on it, and it is still going. I had started to set aside a little money for my new car, which I always do, but then I made another film over Christmas, and so I used that money for the film. So therefore, my car is going to have to run longer till I save more for it. Just a few poems out of this book, Stories of the Driven World. It's places I have driven, and it's also about things that have driven me. This poem has another epigraph, not out of the Bible, but from Peter Bluecloud. Power is the ability to start your chainsaw with one pull. The Legacy of Plains Indian Shirts, Minneapolis Art Institute. This exhibit of war shirts standing on their post, made of hide, porcupine quills, glass beads, paint, horsehair. One shirt with red spots as if cherries, another shirt with a horse, red zigzag lines painted from its mouth, the spirit medicine it took into battle. Other pierced shirts honoring the dream of a warrior. When he was hiding in a badger hole from the enemy, a pierced man told him he would make it back to his own camp. This telling a war story, how it starts above the sky where spirits war. Every tribe developed their warrior societies. They counted coup, they snuck into enemy camp to steal horses tied to their owners when they slept. The ropes had to be cut without waking the sleeper. They led a party into war, and if the party was followed, the leader got behind his warriors and fought hand to hand with the enemy by himself. It is never art, this explaining work, this making the past clear. This work of stepping across rifts, this flame of cold, how breath rises at death, how even our words of peace are battered. By saying this, I am saying, a thistle was in the buffalo's fur. He ran by the thistle bush, by which I am saying he ran too close to the bush, and caught a thistle in his fur. It was the only thistle left on the prairie. How could he not see? In the winter he was cold. I'm telling you this, a thistle could not keep him warm. The loggers cleared the land of trees. The buffalo had everywhere to run into the only thistle left. Last poem. Sweet for Snowplow. The earth was a dream, just floating above some dust. The dream would have remained a dream, but it longed to become a storm. The dust did not want to mix with the dream, but the longing of the dream continued. The dream became the storm it wanted to become in the emptiness of being. The dust held rigid until it began to itch, like one of those wool coats in the mission school. It blew into the center of the dream that became the storm from which the earth stepped. I had one passage I might still read from Pushing the Bear about the basket maker, but in the meantime, are there questions or comments? Yes.
Your writing feels like a meditation. When you write, do you feel like you're meditating? It just has that quality to it to me.
When I write, I try to slow down my voice until I hear the inner voice, until it comes through all the noise in the world. So I guess I could call that meditation. I'm very much a loner, and I sit in my room, and I begin writing, and I think of the past and the ancestors, and I think what message I should be carrying. And I think in the many different genres. I love the abstraction of poetry. I love the concreteness of the narrative of creative nonfiction. I love the novel to get in other people's heads. I like history. I like writing about history. So it is a process of thought, I guess, that takes language upon it as though it were a coat, and then walks out of the room. You know, I already said my watch doesn't work because I don't know how long I've been up here. I have a bracelet with a magnetic hook on it, and it sends my watch off. So if you don't ask me a question, I'm going to read another portion out of Pushing the Bear.
So you identify with your ancestors quite a bit, but you also think about yourself, as a woman, as a Native American, as the percentage of Native American women.
Yes, I do.
And in what way? Who do you think of when you think that?
Who do I think of? I guess my grandmother, who didn't have a chance to do what I am doing, who didn't have a chance to express herself and to know her voice. I think about all the Native women that I write about, whether Sacagawea or Kateri Tekakwitha, whose words were not recorded, who didn't have a chance to write. And I like to give voice to them because the voice is a sacred being. And I have loved very much the journey, and I want them to be there with me on that journey. And I think I feel a longing sometimes that they would also want to be there. Yes?
I love your descriptiveness, but I'm curious about the religious connotation. Is your background truly Methodist, or because you know a lot about Catholicism? Is that all learned, or?
I've moved many different places and have gone to many different churches, but it's mainly evangelical Christianity, not Catholicism, but I was raised a Methodist and then have gone to several churches, including Pentecostal. The born-again fundamental churches is basically what I've been in, because I've always needed help. Life has been bigger than me. So it's been a blessing, and language is important. I do want to read one more passage. I'm sorry to do this.
I was just thinking that Jesuits are explorers, just like the Indians were kind of like explorers to our native land.
That's true.
Bring that out
Yes, it is. I'm so glad to have you all here. That's a book club, by the way, that came. This will be a very short passage, and then we can go. I was talking earlier to someone about The Basket Maker. This book is about the Trail of Tears, how the Cherokee got from the southeast to Indian Territory. And I've read so much during this week from the book, but there was one passage that still seemed to be calling out, I want to be read too. I think these chapters are like my little grandchildren, each one wanting to speak next. I was in the Heard Museum in Arizona while writing this book, and a woman came up to me and said, how do you think baskets got started? I don't know who she was, but I wrote that down. Now this is the story of my baskets. Some think the idea for weaving baskets came from the earth, which is the holder of our cornfields, which is the holder of our lives. Yes, baskets just copy the land. But others think the idea for weaving baskets came from the sky, an upside-down holder of the rain, so it falls back to us. But I say, the idea for baskets came from our stories. The baskets hold fish and corn and beans, just like our stories hold meaning. Yes, I say the baskets copy our stories. So that's enough. I'm going to close the book, even though it wanted to go on. Thank you very much.
Any more questions? Do you have questions? No, I thought I said that. Oh, yes. Deborah.
About, say that you give voice to those who have no voices, but within Native societies there's a lot of oral tradition, so how does oral tradition influence some of your tools?
Whenever I travel, I always have a book on tape because it's more important when I hear it in my ear. I even have the Bible on tape also, and I always listen to the voice of whatever coming into my ear. So oral tradition is very important. And a lot of times when I read and I'm having trouble getting it right, I have a little recorder and I record the voice, and then somewhere down in the middle I can hear that first line and I bring it up. And each book, each piece also has a specific rhythm. Sacagawea, the Stoneheart book I wrote, had the oaring, the rowing on the two rivers. And so I always work for the sound because it's very important. When I was in school, poetry always rhymed. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. And we've gotten away from that a lot, but the same iambic heartbeat rhythm is still there. I can almost talk in the iambic pattern without trying, because it is so basic to our heartbeat, to the way, to the voice, to the spirit, to the soul, I guess. The spoken word is wonderful. It was the written word that the natives used to question. It's like killing the voice, and truly it is. But when you speak it again, it comes to life. And we all can't run around speaking, so we read. I mean, the book club, you read.
We'll probably be thinking of questions as we let the sounds of Diane's reading really, we savor it over the next few days and weeks. It's been really nice.
I've loved these.
Yeah, do you feel like you have dueling
I do. Like the robot.
wired up?
Can you see what they've done? And they go all the way up here. And I have a little antenna here.
All right. Well, we have some thank yous, so don't go away, Diane.
Oh, okay.
First of all, I would like Rebecca Doverspike, who is getting ready to finish her MFA in creative writing, and she's one of the students who I'm sure has been inspired by you, just as all of us faculty have this week. And so this is a gift on behalf of all of us, some West Virginia
thank
made
you.
items.
Thank you.
And Rebecca, I
I'm
think
glad
you
to
wanted
be
to
here.
say a few words, didn't you? About. There you go.
This is not working.
Really close to it.
Okay. We just want to thank you for coming, and even in this brief time, we've got a lot of thoughts from you about writing and life too. So, and that was a beautiful reading and very,
Thank you very much.
very insightful
I've
and
enjoyed
smart.
being
so
here.
Good, thank you.
All right, thank you. And Charlie, Charlie Enos has a gift on behalf of ONI, the student organization affiliated with Native American Studies.
This is a thank you gift for coming and speaking to us. I hope you enjoy
Thank you.
it. Those are our club shirts, or our
Great.
organization shirts.
Thank you for the drumming, too.
Oh, you're welcome.
Good.
And you'll have to unfold this shirt and take a look at it, Diane. I can just picture you in your Equinox driving down the highway. It used to say on the back,
Celebrate like it's 1491.
it used to say party like it's 1491, but you know how the university cracked down on using party on the same,
Celebrate.
anything that had
I wanna
WVU on it, we had to get rid of party. So we changed it to celebrate.
Thank
We
you.
got clever there, so we're very, very grateful. And then on behalf of the faculty, could I have my fellow Native American Studies program people please come down and help me with this? And Bob and Carrie and Elisa, would you come? This is a copy of our book, White Pine Spirit of Peace, the WVU Peace Tree Ceremony in Tyler. And just as a group, we want to present this to Ms. Glancy and thank her for being such an inspiration and for gracing us with her presence. It's just a blessing to have her here with us this semester. So this tells the story of our peace tree, and certainly through stories, music, poetry, sharing of culture, giving voice, peace is possible.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. So.
Thank you.
All right, should we get one photo? We've got our photographer here. Maybe all of us could come in. It's so rare we're all in one place. We're kind of a moving target.
Would we be able to get out of
Yes, we could get away.
Would you also hold this up? You got on one like
it
it,
on.
but I mean like that way.
No.
Oh, you want us out from behind the table? I
Oh,
guess.
sorry,
We have
sorry,
a
sorry.
closing song, so don't go yet. We still have a song.
There we go.
Yeah, that's what I, wait a minute.
Can you scoot this way a little bit? Yeah. Thank you. I couldn't see your face.
Thanks.
Thank you. And thanks
You're
to
so great.
all of the faculty who helped put all of the details of this week's events together. I also want to acknowledge our colleagues from the Department of English, Chairman Jim Harms. Jim, where are you? Oh, there he is. Hi, Jim. And Marianne Salmon. Thank you as well, Director of the Creative Writing Program. Thank you both for being terrific colleagues and partners and co-sponsors in bringing Ms. Glancy here. Let's have a round of applause for the Department of English. All right, and at this point, Dr. High and our ONI students have a closing song. This is an honoring song, so we'd like you all to stand, please. And on your way out tonight, please be sure to help yourself to more cookies and punch, and stop by the book table from the Barnes & Noble Campus Bookstore. Ms. Glancy will be signing copies of her books, and you can't miss. They're all wonderful, and it'll be fun to get those autographed.
We need help here now. This is women tend traditionally be the hand-drawn people, and we need help. So if you all will come forward and actually any women who want to support the drum and to honor Diane Glancy, you can come over here and stand with us. So All right.